Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things, and it was something that I knew going into it, but it was reinforced after finishing, was that I have a pretty good idea of what my endurance pace is. And so I knew what pace I needed to go, like what effort level to to push to like be able to complete the whole thing. Even pushing a little harder than I would have since I was riding with Joe Martindale, who's a very, very strong rider. Even though Joe, when she pushed me to go faster than I would have alone, I would have ridden more conservatively. Either way, like my body still made it. Like bodies are amazing. Even though my longest training ride leading up to that was, like I said, 30 miles unloaded, I was still able to do it. And so I know a lot of people get wrapped up in the amount of training they can get in, like the distance and training rides.
Hmm.
But I just want to say that if anybody's interested in this, though I do recommend you put in as much work as you can, but if life gets in the way, like you can probably still complete it, even if you aren't as trained as you wanted to be.
From KOM Cycling and Michigan Midpack Media, welcome to the Dirty Chain Podcast, the podcast that covers the cycling scene from the viewpoint of the Michigan Midpack. I am your host, Trevor, and on this episode, we talk all about the Polar Roll Ultra race out of the UP of Michigan with Minnesota-based athlete Chelsea Strate. You could consider this kind of a continuation of the last episode. Last episode, we talked with Jill Martindale about the Arrowhead 135, which is also a winter ultra. And within that conversation, she was explaining how she was ramping up and preparing also for the Polar Roll Ultra, a also winter ultra race now that is part of the Polar Roll series of races, or series is not really the right word there, but the Polar Roll has been around for a few years up in the Marquette area, Ishpeming, Michigan, and it has a few different offerings, including a mass start course, 30 miles-ish. There's a 15-mile-ish course as well. You can do an EX version on your own within a certain period of a few weeks, a couple months. And then also new to this year is the Ultra version, and this is the first time that this has been offered. Now, Jill connected me with Chelsea Strate, who turned out to be the perfect person to talk about this new event. Chelsea is an extremely accomplished rider in her own right, and probably there is lots more that we could have discussed outside of the winter biking theme. But for this episode, we talk about her first winter ultra experience, which was the Polar Roll Ultra. And we also take a little detour and talk about injuries and recovery as well. We cover a lot in this chat, so let's get right to it. The Polar Roll Ultra with Chelsea Strate. I saw that you have done you did some riding this weekend. Are you like fully recovered from the long 24, 25-ish hours of riding in the UP?
So riding this weekend was, I mean, definitely on Friday, my legs felt pretty heavy. I couldn't tell if my legs were having a hard time moving or if it was the snow and low tire pressures, but I'm pretty sure my legs were still recovering. Felt a little bit better on Saturday, but my ride on Sunday was also a little bit of a struggle. So yeah, getting
Uh,
some riding in, but I can't say that I'm 100% recovered.
yeah, well, that's understandable. I mean, I've done nothing in the winter that long. I've done some things about that long, and it's not just legs, of course, right? Like it's your whole body that's just a mess after that.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm kind of torn about how to talk about this because there's a few things like so the last episode we had we talked to Jill Martindale and we talked about Arrowhead, and that is of course one of the premier winter ultra races, and not that we got like too deep into the details, but we did talk a lot about bikes and what the experience is like. One thing I appreciated that she brought to the conversation was the idea of how every single even though it could be the same course, even though it can be the same area, year after year, it's a whole different experience because the snow just creates a whole. And I think in winter riding at all, that's seen so apparently. So yeah, so I do want to talk about Polar Roll Ultra. I know it's the first year that it took place. If I'm correct, it was your first Winter Ultra race.
Hmm.
Okay. So yeah, there are some details I'm interested in and about like gear a little bit and this and that, but more so I want to know about how for someone who has never done a Winter Ultra, how that went for you specifically, and then get some details about the Polar Roll Ultra. I'm familiar with that area. I'm familiar with Polar Roll Mass Start. I did it last year. I didn't do it this year, but I'm curious just to get your sense of it's now a week removed. Maybe you still feel it a little bit in your legs, but I would love to hear about your experience.
Well, I was pretty nervous going into the Ultra this year, and some of it has to do with some recovery I was going through. I broke my leg in 2021 pretty pretty severely and spent all of 2022 trying to get back at it. Uh, I pretty much had to build my leg strength up from nothing after that. So it was just a whole year of just trying to like watch my quad grow.
Oh,
and
jeez.
then and then I was feeling pretty good with the progress that I made, but I knew that I had to get the hardware removed. So I had plates and screws in there. So I got those removed in November, so mid-November, and I was a little bit surprised at how long that recovery took. I
Mm-hmm.
thought, healing the incisions would be most of it, maybe a little bit of swelling, but it actually set me back for 5 weeks.
Oof.
So I wasn't really able to start training for the ultra until the beginning of the year, or maybe like right before New Year's. And so coming into the ultra, I signed up for it because it seemed exciting. I asked my surgeon, you know, I can't remember if it was late November or early December, if it seemed like a realistic thing to do. She was like, I think you'll be healed by then. She told me that I'd have to be careful for 6 to 8 weeks while the holes in my bone healed.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, like, I could kind of play it by ear and, you know, if it hurt to ride my bike to like take it easy, but if I was feeling good, I could, essentially do what I wanted. So I didn't have a whole lot of restrictions. And so after the turn of the year, then it really like set in uh,
Yeah,
how much
this
work
is
it was going to
happening.
be.
Yeah.
And I actually, my partner and we went to Marquette between Christmas and New Year's. And I went, and I mean, they got a ton of snow. Minneapolis had a ton of snow, and like not a lot of it had been groomed yet. So I went and tried to ride some of the trails with an unloaded bike. And I was kind of uh, surprised at how hard it was. So I knew I had a long way to go before I could feel like physically ready to do such a big thing. And so luckily I have a coach that I work with, and he came up with a really great training plan to get me as ready as I was going to be. And then I had Jill to talk about gear and everything like that. But it was tough because we didn't know what the course was going to be like exactly. Because the original course started in Marquette, went up to Big Bay, and then down to Ishpeming. But because of some snowmobile club and permit issues, they had to uh, change the course almost completely. And so the new course, I think, was a much better, more attainable option. But it went from like 140 miles with 10,000 feet of climbing and tons of snowmobile trail and lots of remote areas. um, and you only had 40 hours to finish it. And then it changed to 48 hours and a whole different course um, with a little bit less climbing. But they had to like groom in single track like 2 weeks before the race. Like they had to like blaze trail essentially for
Yeah.
us. So we didn't really know what we were getting into.
Can I
And so,
can I
yeah.
interrupt real quick?
Mhm.
Uh, the so you're going through this this healing process, and you're looking at, you circled the ultra, which is like, good, nice, like just easing into it, Chelsea. I mean, you picked like the hardest thing, but
Uh,
like, even though it sounds like you haven't been racing or riding at the level that you had been in the past, like you've had experience. I'm assuming experience winter biking and experience just like racing and doing events and some long events. I'm assuming in the past, right?
yeah. So I've been, even though I haven't had to put any of my sleeping stuff on my winter bike, yeah, I've been fat biking for a decade and fat bike racing for a decade. Uh, I as far as long events, I've completed Unbound 200. I've I rode the Crusher 250-mile route in the UP. So I've done a couple pretty long events, but this is the first one that sleeping gear was required, or
Mm-hmm.
I actually like took with me. I've also done a couple bike packing trips over the years. Yeah, I think my first bike tour was, and I can't remember exactly how early it was. It must have been like 2010, maybe. Um, so I had a little bit of experience with bike camping, but I hadn't had to like put it together
Yeah.
for a winter race that also involved a lot of required gear.
Yeah. So they're like, getting to race day, there were a ton for you specifically, but and for others, there was a lot of unknowns about how your body will fare, unknowns about what the course is even going to be, unknowns about how you could ride with a bike fully loaded and all that. Like it seemed, even though you are a very accomplished and experienced bike rider, cyclist, still like this event itself created a whole set of new experiences for you.
Hmm. Yeah, leading up to it, I never trained with the gear on my bike. I didn't get some of the required gear until, some of it like the week ahead of time. I borrowed a negative 20-degree sleeping bag from a coworker and a bivy and from another coworker and some other stuff from my partner. So like I didn't even have all the gear to practice. And so I had really wanted to try winter camping or winter bike packing to go and test some camping overnight because that would have been a possibility on this race. If the conditions would have been harder, if it would have taken me a longer time, I would have wanted to stop and sleep. And if I were to have to do it outdoors, I don't have a whole lot of like deep winter experience. but I never got any of that training in. My longest distance ride leading up to the event was like 30 miles. uh, so
Yeah. Again, yeah, just ease right into it. Uh, did you happen to weigh your bike before you left? Yeah, it's probably a good thing.
no,
And
yeah,
I just thought of this right now, and I'm assuming that it's a thing, but do you gear your bike differently when it's fully loaded versus like, do you put like a smaller chainring on front or just make sure that it's easy, or do you just like run it the way that you had it already?
so I a lot of times I will make some last minute choices, especially based off of I don't know, like a ride with similar course features. So when I rode the Margie Gessick uh, mountain bike race in September. I chose the 62-mile length of the race, and it has a lot of really steep climbs. Actually, on some of the same single track that was on this polar roll. And with my mountain bike, I actually had a friend bring me a smaller chainring to swap like the night before the race because I had ridden some of the trails, and even with fresh legs, was struggling on some of the hills with my gearing.
Hmm.
This one, I just went with what I had. I had a slightly bigger cassette. I probably could have gone with a smaller chainring, but it actually did pretty well. I might have preferred to spin a little bit more. I had a 30 tooth elliptical wolf tooth chainring. I think a 28 elliptical would probably have just been a little bit more enjoyable on some of the climbs, but
Yeah, definitely.
um,
Okay,
I
okay, yeah. Okay, enough of the gear talk. I want to know. So the start of the ultra was on Monday. Were you there during the mass start over the weekend?
Yep, I got up there on late Thursday night and worked remotely on Friday. Saturday, I didn't watch a whole lot of the race. I saw a little bit of the start and a little bit of the finish because I was kind of anxiously packing my bike and
Sure.
gathering stuff so I could go for a test ride.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't. I know that the weather always plays a big, of course, always plays a big role in these kind of races. But specifically this year, I know that there's a big question mark with how warm it was going to be, and then the weather kind of dropped, but it supposedly it might be icy. So I wasn't sure if there was a little bit of intel you got from others that had did the mass start, but because essentially, what was it, mile 110 to 140 or something, you also rode the mass start.
Yeah, so the last, I think it was 20, I don't know, I've heard anything, I can't remember how many miles exactly. I think it was about 25 miles. I think we hit the single track at like a mile 115. But yeah, a bunch of it was on that single track that the normal polar roll race is. And that is a challenging section. That was by far the hardest part of the race. And that was the last 25 miles. But the conditions we hit, most of us hit, were way worse than what the normal polar roll race
Hmm.
hit. The normal polar roll race, it sounds like it was like record fast conditions.
Yeah.
And then we hit some fresh snow.
Well, and I've seen this like from several people, and even like Todd put it up, but like the it was great until it wasn't uh saying, and that's specifically about the ultra, correct? And it sounds like the conditions were so at the beginning, okay at the beginning, and then really took a turn. When about in your progression of the race did that take the turn?
Right. So I would say I feel like the first almost 60 miles were all just like we were spoiled. Like it was really great conditions. There were a couple soft spots where, your rear tire might sink in for a second, but for the most part, I was amazed at how well the conditions held up. for the first bit. The first section that was a little choppy was when we were climbing Mount Marquette Road. It's a snowmobile route, so the snow had been a little bit chewed up and a little sugary. Plus, it's steep and long, so it was really hard to keep pedaling with a loaded bike. Uh, but that was short lived. Then the conditions were really, really great until probably for us, it was about mile 81. We stopped at our friend and teammate Evan Simula. His camp was on the route, turned it into an aid station, which was amazing. But while we were there, it started to snow a little bit. And once we left, the snow really started coming down. So yeah, that was at like mile 81. And I didn't really realize how much the snow was slowing us down until one of the groomers came by us. It was a snowmobile. It was two snowmobiles, and the snowmobile in the back had a big tire it was dragging. And I jumped into the track that they made for us, and conditions really sped up. So I thought we were going slow because it was a hill and we were full, starting to get tired. But it turns out that the fresh snow was a little bit harder to ride in than I gave it credit for.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
then yeah, but most of that was road or the Iron Ore Heritage Trail until we got into town in Ishpeming. Fresh snow on the roads there. And then when we got to the single track to the Ramba trails, that last 25 miles, the snow, I mean, the advantage of having that fresh snow is we could see the route by following other people's tire tracks. But, there's only like one fresh track. Everything else was like kind of getting covered with snow.
Oh man.
But then all the hills already had footprints and tire tracks on them. So the hills, we weren't hitting them fresh. They're already getting a little mushy. So it was a lot of push a bike up, push a loaded bike up the hill.
Push a loaded bike, yeah. Is So I know like Arrowhead had a supported version and unsupported version. Was just this all unsupported, or was it like semi-supported? I mean, you talked about some like an aid station. Is it all kind of like Trail Angel supported situations? I mean, there's not like there weren't true aid stations, or were there?
There were true
Okay.
aids. Well, there was one true, from what I understand, there was one true aid station at mile 40, Lake and Inland, which actually had some of the Polaroid folks there. I could be wrong, but it felt really official. There was a heated tent and hot dogs and the finisher cookies and a big fire. Like it was really a lot of spectators. So it was mile 40, mile 80. So Embark Maple Syrup, they had a tent at that mile 40 that I was just talking about, but they also had a tent at mile 80. So maybe it was official, but I don't think it was part of the original route to be an aid station. But then because it ended up being on the same road that Evan's camp is on, I think it all just worked out that ended up being a really great spot.
Gotcha.
And then you hit the bike when you get into mile 60-ish, you go through Marquette, and there's a short, very close to the route, there's Border Grill if you want to go get a burrito, there's McDonald's and a Walgreens and pretty much any amenity not too far away from there. And then when you get to Ishpeming, mile 110 or 115, depending what time you get there, you might have some stuff open, you might not. But West End Bike and Ski, they are a bike shop in town there, and they supported the race and kept the space open throughout the entire ultra, overnight and everything. And so when we stopped there really quick before hitting the last single track, there were people sleeping on the floor. It was like, yeah, some people chose to like nap there. Other people had Airbnbs like in Ishpeming that they could go sleep at if they wanted. at Evan's camp. I'm not sure if anybody did, but he's got a cabin uh, there that people could have slept in. I know the Embark tent was heated and people slept in there. So it wasn't like I can't say that it was 100% unsupported. They required that you were self-supported, but you could take advantage of any amenities that were out there. There weren't a whole lot of rules around that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. And then I'm assuming like there were the post race gear check too to make sure that like you needed the what was it like 3,000 calories like a peanut butter jar or something and um,
Mm-hmm.
um, so but then so you never I mean so you had you carried things like a what was it a 20-degree bag or a negative 20-degree
A
bag
negative,
and negative 20
yep,
degree bag
negative 20.
and
Mhm.
I'm
And
I'm sure a bunch of other things that you had on your bike, but you probably didn't even need to use. Or
mhm.
yeah, which is probably for the better, right? You probably didn't want to sleep in the snow. I'm guessing. That's just a guess, but
Mhm. Right. So lots of required gear. I didn't know if I'd be able to make it without sleeping, so I'm really glad I was prepared just in case. It's the UP, so you never exactly know what the weather's going to be like. So if the conditions would have been soft, it would have, we could have been stuck on pretty remote areas. It just turns out that most of the route was pretty fast. But I do have to say that the folks that stayed overnight, or slept a few hours at Evans Camp, I think they woke up to like 8 inches of snow on the road.
oh,
uh, so some of them were moving pretty slow until I think some of it did get cleared and
ugh,
groomed for them. So depending on like where you were in the course and at what time, totally determined what your experience was like.
yeah, definitely. Um, so so now on the other side of this whole experience, um, you have now done a winter ultra. You have now experienced a really long time in the wilderness of in the winter wilderness. I'm curious about some like takeaways or tips for someone like myself or someone who hasn't done this yet. Do you feel like one experience gives you some insight and knowledge that you can bestow upon the rest of the world? What was like some of the most important pieces or just things that you found were the most important to get you through the experience?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things, and it was something that I knew going into it, but it was reinforced after finishing, was that I have a pretty good idea of what my endurance pace is. And so I knew what pace I needed to go, like what effort level to to push to like be able to complete the whole thing. I've been doing this long enough that I kind of have an idea of that, but uh even pushing a little harder than I would have since I was riding with Joe Martindale, who's a very, very strong rider. Uh, I'm really happy that I had her. She's super experienced, had tons of expertise. So I felt like an um, ultra royalty with me the whole time, which was really great. But um, even though Joe, when she pushed me to go faster than I would have alone, I would have ridden more conservatively. Either way, like my body still made it. Like bodies are amazing. Even though my longest training ride leading up to that was, like I said, 30 miles unloaded, I was still able to do it. And so I know a lot of people get wrapped up in the amount of training they can get in, like the distance and training rides. I mean, I think some of that is good for making sure that your butt can handle it, your touch points, your butt, your feet, your hands.
Mm-hmm.
But I I just want to say that if anybody's interested in this, though I do recommend you put in as much work as you can, but if life gets in the way, like you can probably still complete it, even if you aren't as trained as you wanted to be. Another thing is that I was a little bit intimidated by gear going into it. Like I said, I borrowed a negative 20-degree sleeping bag. Thanks, Dan. Also, he lent me like a cradle to like carry some stuff on my handlebars. Uh, Risa, she lent me a bivy. Thank you, Risa. um, and then, I borrowed some stuff from my partner, but like I didn't have to buy everything. Like a negative 20-degree sleeping bag, full retail can put you back like $600 to $1,100, depending on like which one you're going to buy. And there's a huge community out there. Um, so there's certain like gear requirements, but like you don't need a fancy new stove. You don't need like there's a lot of things that you might not need to buy. You can just run what you have and what works, even if it might be a little heavier or maybe not optimized. But the more you do it, the more you'll figure out like what the important gear to swap out would be and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's a great community out there of people to talk to and ask questions, and I learned a lot going into this.
Yeah, I think those are two. Some of the biggest hurdles. I think gear is a huge hurdle in the whole cycling community, but especially when you're talking about bike packing and when you're not just talking about only a bike, but a specific kind of bike, and then all the gear, and then how do you put that gear on the bike? And so that, I think for myself or for someone else, that might be a huge, not only a hurdle, but like being intimidated by that whole idea. And then, super interesting about endurance and like you said, you wouldn't recommend that you go into it with only a 30-mile race under your belt, but the fact that the human body can endure through such a long effort is pretty amazing. And then both of these things, I think there's like a through line, is the community and the people. And for the endurance and during the race, you had someone to ride with you and push you and kind of support you that way. And then you had a lot of support of friends to help you with the gear and make it not intimidating and make it not a hurdle. So I think that is a great thing about the cycling community, is that if you need something, there's probably someone that can help you, and maybe you just need to speak up and ask for help sometimes. I love that. And kind of going backwards to the beginning, when you weren't sure about, you signed up for it, but you hadn't done anything like this since your surgery, since your recovery. Now on the other side, does that give you a little bit of further motivation or confidence that maybe you didn't have before?
I would say that this was this winter, like a few weeks leading up to the event was like the first time that I felt like I was doing things without thinking about my leg and like the recovery and how it feels or whatever. I was still a little bit nervous about it a couple days before because my knee was bugging me a little bit, but I just adjusted I'm glad I got the takedown rides in the weekend leading up to the ultra because I just adjusted my cleat position and my saddle height, and my knee didn't bother me at all. But for the most part, I just feel like now the injury is behind me and I can just like move forward without thinking about it. But it's defined me for the last year and a half, I think.
Yeah.
So it feels good to be able to kind of close that chapter.
That's huge. Did you get injured riding?
Oh, yes, ish. It was kind of a freak accident. Um, so it was kind of a freak accident. I was trying a mountain bike feature that involved some rocks that kind of went up and over through this tree V. Uh, and it was I was kind of in my head about it. And I decided to give it a shot, but I was overthinking it and decided to bail. I was too busy thinking about like if my pedals would hit the tree, like one of the trees or my handlebars or whatever. So I was like, okay, this wasn't a great first attempt, so I'm going to bail. And put my foot, I was going like 0 miles per hour, put my foot out to the side, tipped my bike over, and I was going to land on my foot. Like, same bail move I've done a million times. And I felt 100% in control. But when my foot hit the ground, my knee just gave. And I just like collapsed. And I was a little bit confused at what happened. I had like no idea I broke my leg. I just thought something was funky with my knee. So I think when I put my foot down, I put it down on like a slanted surface instead of a flat surface. So I was just that plus physics just
Yeah.
like hit my knee wrong. And so I was laying on the ground and I couldn't straighten my leg. So I knew something was wrong, but I thought like, oh, maybe I dislocated my knee or something, not really knowing how it works. Um, and since I couldn't straighten my leg, we used a tube as a sling to keep my like over my shoulder, like around my ankle to like keep my leg bent. We slammed my saddle down on my bike seat
Oh
and
my gosh.
uh, kind of like scooted out of there the best we could. And when I got to the ER and they told me it was broken, I was like, wait, what? And they're like, not only is it broken, but it's broken pretty bad. And we have to send you to a trauma orthopedic surgeon. And it
Ugh.
was,
Ugh.
yeah, that was not what I was expecting.
Yeah, and it seemed like the a long road to recovery out of that. You said that was
Hmm.
in 21.
Yeah, it was in August of 2021. And so I'd broken my tibial plateau. So the top of my tibia, I broke both sides of it. So I needed a plate on either side of it and tore my meniscus a little bit. Luckily, my ACL, PCL, MCL were pretty much okay, except the bone that my ACL was attached to, like that part broke. So I had to wait for the bone to heal before my ACL was good to go.
And I know
But
we're kind of getting off on a tangent, and this is not about pull roll necessarily, but I
mhm.
think this is super interesting. I recently I'm kind of like going through recovery as well. I crashed last year, and I have a plate in my clavicle, which so many cyclists do. But it's interesting that when you were saying leading up to polar roll, and it was like the first time you stopped thinking about your knee or your leg. It wasn't something that was in your mind all the time. And I think that I've said this before to people that it's like I'm sitting here and I'm like, I can, like, there's always reminders that I crash. I can feel it right now. I know that I have metal in my body. And it's like always there. And then there's, of course, like the mental reminders as you are riding as well. That turned out to be more of a difficulty than I thought it would. But then
Mhm.
like the physical, of course, like the physical getting through that is tough and slow and more way harder than I thought. And then that, of course, like compounds upon the mental side of it too. But then hearing you talk about this, like, yeah, I don't think my injury was as bad, I guess, as like a severe break in the leg. But knowing what it's like to just live with metal in your body, and I don't know. I don't think I'd want. They said they could take it out. I think there was always an option of. Did you have an option of keeping it in, keeping your plates in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I also went through a clavicle break the year prior.
Hmm.
And so in 2020, I broke my clavicle, and then earlier in 2021, I got the hardware out
Oh, okay.
because it was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that I got it out. But yeah, so I went through
Interesting.
the clav. I do have to say that going through the clavicle break, at the time felt like the end of the world.
Hmm. Yeah.
uh, but it put, after breaking my leg, kind of put things into perspective. Like, oh, that was like a
That
blip
was
on the
nothing.
radar. But you can't discount the mental toll it takes on you
Yeah.
because, for several months back into riding after breaking my collarbone, I would I would panic at weird moments that were completely irrational. Like I'm just going around a corner and I slammed on my brakes and
Mm.
like made a dumb move because like my body, I don't know. I don't know if it's exactly PTSD, but I feel like it's close where uh yeah, where your mind has to heal as well
Right.
as your
Right.
body, and it
Yeah.
takes the mind and confidence and to get your mojo back, it takes quite a lot longer than you'd expect.
Yeah. And I think it does take, like all I'm sure this is the same with anyone going through any sort of injury or any sort of like setback in their that they're at this level at one time and then there's a setback, whether that be injury, whether that be life issues, whether that be just different situations, and then there's something that's hard because you're not where you were before, and it almost like there's a couple ways like your mind has to wrap around like, okay, maybe I'm not that anymore, maybe I'm this, and then it's like, okay, well, I have to be okay being this now instead of that. But then if you do get to the point of being what you were before or like accomplishing something you did before, then that's a huge hurdle to get over. That's a huge, like, you can look back and say, okay, now I'm almost at zero again, and I can go from here. And um, I, I saw that last year. A couple races I did. I was like, okay, that was really hard, and I know that I'm not where I should be. And that was really hard, and I know I'm not where I should be. And then there was a race where I'm like, I did better at this race this year than I did last year. So now I know that maybe I am not completely over it, but like back at zero, and I can kind of move on. And maybe, like you said, you're not thinking about your leg anymore, and it's just more of a it, now you can start enjoying the experience for what the experience is, I guess, instead of hoping your leg holds up the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean I'm guessing that kind of like the lead up to Polar Roll and then the of course the finish of Polar Roll. I hope for you that kind of feels like a big accomplishment in many of those in many ways. Not just to finish your first ultra, but also do it in a time where you're trying to get through these certain hurdles, I guess.
Yeah, it feels really good to be done. And I feel like I'm uh, ready for this coming season. It's weird to have such a long ride under my belt this early in the
Oh
year,
yeah,
being that
absolutely.
I'm in Minnesota.
um, before I mean, we did kind of got off on a tangent a little bit. But is there anything else about Polar Roll? I was kind of bummed not being there this year. I was there last year for the mass start, and it was fantastic. It was kind of one of those things where the weather was terrible the day of and even the morning of, and then like Danny and crew went out and groomed it, and it was just like a highway. Like it was a pretty incredible experience. But did like one thing we didn't talk about, and that I'm not sure of is like where did you all start and finish? I mean, you finished in Ishpeming, right? Did you finish like the same finish as the mass start finish?
No, we finished at West End
Okay.
Bike. The mass start events started at or finished at the school.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
They started and finished at the school. So you're just a few blocks away.
Where was the start then for the ultra?
It was in near Munising
Okay.
at the same campground that the Crusher started at this summer.
Okay.
Uh, so I think it was 20 minutes from Munising.
Okay.
So we
Okay.
started east, made our way west to Marquette, and then kept going west, and then went a little south.
And
But it was a point to point, and it was kind of a long point to point. So there were definitely some logistics
oh
to
yeah.
figure out there, and I have to give a big shout out to our friend and teammate Evan, who not only had the aid station, but he also made sure that we were delivered to the start safely.
Oh good.
Mhm.
um and there were like just under 30 of you all that took this on, right? It wasn't,
Yep.
I mean, for a first year, first ultra, I feel like that's a pretty good number. You know, it's funny. Like I know when it was announced, and I'm like, Todd, what are you doing? Like another like I don't know. And for me, I'm like forgetting that there's this whole culture of winter ultra events and athletes. So yeah, so like at first I thought it was like you're gonna get someone killed, but then I then I forgot. Oh no, like people actually do this all the time. But yeah, so
Yeah.
there were like 28 of you or something, or
hmm I think 28-ish. I
oh,
can't remember the
okay,
exact number, but that's pretty close. Uh, I think a fun thing to note was that three people dropped out at one point. Kind of reevaluated situation after it had snowed a bunch. So they had originally turned in their trackers and called it quits, but with some peer pressure from a couple others that were still out there, they decided to get their bikes ready and grab their trackers and go and finish the dang thing.
no way.
So, yeah, so there were three people that almost didn't finish it, but went back out there and they still finished within a few hours of the cutoff.
Oh, that's amazing. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and I think only four people total had dropped out, so it had a pretty good finish rate. So I feel really glad about that. I think the just the community feel of this one, like it felt like we were I mean, I saw certain people, I felt like at every corner for the first 80 miles,
Oh
like a
wow.
photographer poking out or a friend or whatever. So it was super cool just to see the community support. That's one thing Polar Roll and a lot of those 906 adventure team events tend to bring out as like great community. Um, because they are hard events and they are ones that people train all year for or worry
hmm
about all year for. um, like big goal events for people. With the ultra, I have no doubts that next year will. I mean, assuming they'll have it again next year, I have no doubts we're going to have more people. I think just the positive reviews from all the racers
hmm
this year is just going to put it on more people's radar. It's been done, so it's attainable.
Yeah.
um, I think it was hard for people to sign up when you didn't know what the distance was because when I originally registered, it said 100 miles and ended up being 140.
Yeah, so put the mileage in perspective. Like, so you finished like 24 hours, right?
Yep.
How do you have any idea of when you hit 100 miles, like like how many hours it was?
Oh, I didn't look at the hours, but I remember where it was. We were climbing, I think it was Wolf Lake Road. Uh, or it was between Evans Camp and Ishpeming. Uh, and I don't remember what time it was, but it was definitely dark out. It was probably like 10, 11 p.m., something
Okay.
like that.
So, but like, so I mean, we're talking 7 hours more of riding, probably 6 or 7, something like that.
Well, we didn't start the single track until 12:30 or 12:45 a.m. and we didn't finish till 7 a.m. So just that last section
Yeah.
was, you know,
And I'm assuming that if it was 100, he would have snuck that single track in there somewhere. But yeah, like
mhm,
yeah, 40 miles is a substantial difference between 100
mhm,
miles and 140 miles.
right. So I hope they do a similar course next year because I thought the course was great. I thought it was starting near Munising. I mean, the only thing that would make it better is if we started in the Ramba trails in Ishpeming and went to to and finished in Munising. That would because you get all the hard work out of the way,
Yeah.
and then I mean, again, depends on the snow conditions
Hmm.
and time of day and where in the pack you are. But uh, I gently suggested that to Todd, so we'll see what happens next year.
It's hard for me to see like one of the 906 races finishing that far out of like the Marquette, Ishpeming, Nagani area. But yeah, you said in the pack and everything. Did it feel to you competitive? Or did it just was it more of a not maybe the opposite of competitive, but maybe not even the opposite of competitive. I mean, you're competing to finish it. You're competing to complete it. You're competing to beat the course, basically.
Hmm.
Did it feel at all like you were trying to compete against, like making sure that you were podiumed or top five, or did it have that feel or that vibe at all?
A little bit.
Oh, it did. Okay.
A little bit. Some of that was so it was I rode with Jill, and then there were two other women that we rode with a few times. So there was Claire and Christy, and both of them are really, really strong riders. And it was really great to share the course with both of them at various times. But Jill and I think we spent a good chunk of time in front, I believe. And then we did use having the other women near us as a little bit of motivation to keep moving. But I actually made a mistake when we got back into town and followed the wrong line on my navigation. And we actually were passed uh, while we were locked in town just
uh,
before the finish. And so when Claire finished, it sounds like she finished ahead of us. She put such an impressive, uh, like she closed the gap on us in the single track. She was like almost to us. Had been following our tire track, and the fact that she could see it, even with the blizzard like conditions, means that she was like right there. And so when we made the mistake in town, which was mostly my fault, she just went straight to the finish and beat us by 5 minutes.
uh,
Uh,
man, five
and so when
minutes.
she,
5 minutes for that long of a event, though. I mean, that's like
uh
neck and
huh,
neck.
yeah. And so when we showed up, Claire was there, and she thought we had finished like 10 minutes ahead of her, and like we were like, where did you come from? So
uh,
we had no idea she was so close. But it was really impressive how quickly she was gaining on us in the single track because I mean, I know I was burning out pretty hard.
and
Um,
she was riding by herself too, right?
yeah,
Oh man,
yeah. So
I mean,
that's off.
yeah, no kidding. I mean, not. I feel like at that point of the event or experience or whatever, like, man, being by yourself, that's yeah, that I don't know. That's pretty impressive to be
Yeah.
able to
And then
push through that.
right? And then we had somebody catch us in the single track, and we were kind of asking if he had seen Christy because we thought Christy was going to be the closest competitor. And he was talking about Claire and how he didn't think Claire was going to catch up to us. Um, and we didn't realize it was actually her partner that,
Uh,
that had said that. So we found out after that was actually Claire's partner that was
so
like, "Oh, I don't think Claire's going to catch you." But we were
well,
like,
yeah,
why is he talking about Claire? Like we thought Claire was further back and Christy was going to be the closer one.
smart. That's
Uh-huh. But Man, it was so awesome just to like have both of them out there. Like it was a delight to, like I said, an honor to share the course with both Claire and Christy at different times because I had never met Claire before. So it was really good to get to know her. And Christy, I knew was already a really strong rider and she did the Polar Mass start and finished third in the women's category. So she's coming into it after a hard race,
Oh, she
which is,
raced on Saturday and then turned around and raced on Monday too.
yeah,
Oh
pretty
wow.
impressive.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, for me, that wasn't even an option. I was like, no, no way.
Yeah.
So,
I know
yeah, because you,
like Roy Krantz did the snowshoe. I don't even know how was that like the 30 miles. I mean, was it the same distance as the mass start course? But he
I
just
think it's
did
all the
it.
same.
Yeah, he just did it on snowshoes.
Hmm.
Which probably I should see. I should look back and see how long that took him. I'm guessing a little longer than it took the bikes. But yeah, and then he turned around and did the ultra. So man, that is super impressive for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, it was, I mean, a good chunk of the course, or actually a good chunk of the field, were all new to ultra racing. There was a handful of seasoned ultra riders, but it was a good number, a good percentage of beginner, or I wouldn't say beginner riders, but new to the winter ultra
Winter
sport.
ultras, yeah, that's so cool. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it seems like from my end, from the outside, it looks like you said, it looked like a success. It looked like people enjoyed it in their own weird way, and yeah, I would agree. If they do it next year, I'm assuming there'll be more people for sure. Um, I know I kind of cut us off with some gear stuff, but are there any other specific gear things that you want to talk about? You riding like a salsa, right? Or
Nope, I was on an Atso.
a not so. Okay,
Yep.
my
So
mistake.
I rode an Atso Wojtek.
Okay. Um, and yeah, what I know it's always a big question, but like tire choices, um, I don't think anyone needed to do studs because it wasn't icy necessarily, but yeah, like what tires were you running on that?
So I would say, well, even though we had a little bit of fresh snow, I feel like stud definitely did help in some sections.
You did have
Uh,
studs.
yep,
Okay.
most people they were recommending studs,
Oh, okay.
and I always forget because I almost always use studs. I'm, I don't see a reason why not to use studs these days because they don't really slow you down in the snow. And so I had studded 45 North Dillinger
Yep.
4 tires,
Hmm.
which I think were a great choice. I underestimated how much tire pressure you can get away with when you have a loaded bike because you
Ooh.
just add weight to your bike, so you add friction. And so I was able to, I don't know exactly what tire pressure I was running, but it was pretty high. I mean, I would say probably 8 or 9
Oh
psi.
wow. Yeah.
Uh, Mainly because the course was in really great condition. And even when we had fresh snow towards the end, because it was such a hard packed base, uh, that the higher pressures, I was still getting pretty good traction. My legs would run out of juice before I ran out of traction
Oh, that's great.
in most situations. Yeah.
Cool. Um, yeah. Anything else? I mean, yeah, we've kind of covered a lot of stuff, but
Yeah, we did. We've been around the world. Uh,
oh, so the you said this is like really early in the season to do such long of a race. What else are you looking at this season in terms of racing? You have a busy schedule, or do you have a couple things on the calendar?
I have a couple of things on the calendar. I have 2 more fat bike races. I have the Sweaty Yeti fat bike race at Levis Mound in Wisconsin. That one I'm pretty excited for. It's a 3 hour format and lapped, so however many laps you can do in 3 hours.
Oh, cool.
It's usually a party. It's a long one if you do it solo, but they have teams that do it as well. So yeah, it usually has a party atmosphere. And then Fat Bike Berkey is the weekend after that, and that one's just like a good season closer. Especially the end of daylight savings.
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
so that's like, okay, now spring can come, right? After that. And then the beginning of April, there's the Ragnarok 105 gravel race here in Minnesota. That one's a favorite early season hard gravel race. I mean, I feel like it was like 8,000 feet of climbing
Oh, goodness.
in that one. And then in May 20th, there's the Bentonville Rule of Three,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
which so I signed
That's
up for that one this year, which will be a new one.
so that yeah, that like begs the question, what bike do you choose for that? Because isn't that like there's never a aren't there like three different sections, and you can ride a mountain bike or a gravel bike, or I don't know. I don't know why you would ride a road bike, but but isn't that the
Uh,
whole point of rule of three? It's just like kind of like all up in the air. Like, what bike do you choose, and do you underbike or
yeah,
overbike?
yeah, I will definitely underbike.
Okay,
I
cool.
have an Atzo Wahila C, which is a kind of a competitive geometry gravel bike, carbon gravel bike with tons of tire clearance.
Oh, nice.
So, it's just a matter of deciding which tires to put on there.
Yeah,
Like, do I do,
are you on the? Oh yeah, talk about tires, and then I gotta follow up.
so, do I do like, oftentimes I'll do like a 700 by 42 tire, for, riding single track and stuff. But people are talking about how slicey the trail is. I usually go with more of a durable casing, uh, because I have no tolerance for flats. Even if I sacrifice a little bit
Of weight.
of weight,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, so I think I might do the Terravel Rutlands, which I tend to do for a lot of events. I know they handle well in single track, but uh, I'll be looking over tire choices to see if I might want to go wider or.
So where do you land on the gravel bar, the gravel bike dropper seat post conversation? Because I feel like this might be like, I don't know, that I would assume that maybe that would help out a little bit, especially in the single track areas of that race.
Do you know what? I haven't really thought much about it. That's actually a good point that I might want to play with, maybe adding a dropper post. But normally I feel like I've never needed one, even when
Okay.
riding single track. There was one particular ride in California I did in October, out near LA, where I ended up on some kind of bandit trail that was super, super steep that, maybe I could have ridden downhill if I had a dropper just because it was so steep. But most of the time, I'm not I'm not shy about just getting behind my saddle and
And
getting
sending
back there.
sending it. Well, I mean, it sounds like your handling skills are much better than my own. I feel like if I did rule of three, I would go mountain bike because I don't think I could handle the single track on my gravel bike. But that's just me.
Yeah. So I mean, some of my background is when I started mountain biking, I didn't have a mountain bike. I only had my cross bike, and I learned how to mountain bike in Minneapolis and then in Traverse City, where there wasn't too much for technical riding. And so actually the first several mountain bike races I did on my cross bike with
Oh.
canny brakes and 33 tires and whatever.
Perfect. Yeah.
Uh,
So you're kind of
mhm.
built for it then.
Yeah. I mean, then I got soft, and once I started using suspension,
It's hard to go back. Yeah.
it's hard to go back. But for that one, I'm excited about having the right bike for the fast sections and then under biking on the technical
Yeah. It
sections.
sounds like that is a race for you for sure. Um,
Hmm.
Okay, rule of three, and then what else are you looking at? So that's just still May, right?
Yep, that's May. I signed up to help coach at Margie Gessick camp
Oh,
again.
cool.
That's one of my favorite things to do in the summer. But I'm kind of leaving the calendar open after that. I usually try to do,
Nice.
like one new event per year that involves some traveling. So the rule of three is going to be that event this year. And then I have my partner runs this fun event in the fall called the Hodag Country Ramble. It's the weekend after Labor Day weekend in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, and it's a weekend of camping. There's a so it's Friday and Saturday night camping, Saturday morning ride, uh, and it's he labels it a ramble because it's not quite gravel. I used it on a gravel bike last year, but it's through a lot of forest roads, like really like minimum maintenance, kind of like it's super cool backwoods
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay.
With some gravel road, with some pavement. And then Saturday night, there's family dinner and a big bonfire and party and people spinning records. And it's at his dad's hunting property.
Oh wow.
And so it's like a group camp. But it was one of my favorite things to do last year. Just like a good weekend of friends and new and old. And even on Friday night, he has a bandit cross race for anybody who wants to just like do a quick 25-minute. We decide how many laps we do, like after we do like a neutral lap. But yeah, so
That's
the
funny.
Hoday Country Ramble is gonna be a blast.
That's great. Well, very cool. This is fantastic. Again, like I have known about you, but I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, so it was great to be able to not only talk about Polar Roll, but just talk to you and get to know you a little bit more. I hope. Yeah, I'm not sure if our paths will cross this year. I'll be at Margie. I'm not sure if you'll be at Margie, the race itself. But I'm gonna give that a go this year. But
Have you done it before?
I have not. No.
It's my favorite.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of people's favorite, and a lot of people's not favorite too. Yeah, I have not done it, and I'm excited for it for sure. Um,
Yeah, I hope I can make it work to attend this year. If I'm
yeah,
not racing, I would love to cheer my friends on. But if I can race, I will definitely do it.
yeah, yeah. Great. But thank you so much. It was cool to hear your perspective of Polaroid Ultra. You made it sound not so terrible. So
Okay, take everything I say with a grain of salt because I do tend to do that.
okay.
I usually have a little bit more positive of a disposition on that kind of stuff, but I think that's also why I tend to do stuff like that
Well, I
because I'm like,
mean,
oh, it wasn't so bad.
I feel like that is a similar thing to a lot of people who are willing to put themselves through those kind of experiences. I mean, if you weren't able to at this point, removed from the race, like to say, "Oh, that was pretty awesome," like that was great. I don't know if you would have ever gotten to the start of the race itself, you know. And
Hmm.
so I'm wondering if most of the people I talk to that went through it, I find it hard that there would be many that would say, you know what, that was garbage. I will never do that again. That was just,
Hmm.
I don't think you're alone in that. I mean, it was still cool. Like you still were able to communicate how hard it was and how difficult something like that can be. So, and 24 hours in the snow, just no matter how you slice it, it sounds pretty dang difficult.
Hmm.
But thank you. Like it was a cool perspective to hear about. It's a first year ultra, and then it's your first ultra, and yeah, it was perfect. So I don't. Yeah, I should know how to finish these things, but but thank you for sharing your experience. This was great.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It was great to meet you.
The Dirty Chain Podcast is a Michigan Midpack Media production in partnership with KOM Cycling, the source for your bike accessories and necessities. Connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Dirty Chain Podcast. Email dirtychainpodcast@gmail.com. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on whatever platform you use to listen. Audio editing and original music by myself, Trevor Gibney. A huge thank you to Chelsea for joining us on this episode, and thank you all for listening to the Dirty Chain Podcast. And as always, keep your chain clean, but get your chain dirty. We will see you in the Midpack.